kind of band is this?
Everybody poops sometimes.
Give us this.
Wake up, sweetness.
Your first time should be more than special.
I'm in, Savannah said. Good Lord, Gemma.
When a man and a woman, in this case, really, really love each other, what happens is they fuck.
Ooh, hello?
Oh, dang it, I lost my fish. This next word almost sounds like Quidditch. Quidditch milade Diana Agosiagath an Fiedian.
As much as I love fucking you, sweetness. We stared into each other's eyes whilst I moaned in ecstasy.
Having consumed half of the bourbon, I keep saying bourbon. You know, every time I mess up on a word, Stunt Mama just shows up.
She had her seductive smile on her lips.
I said we couldn't have sex. I didn't say anything about everything else. Ew. Happy to help. Biatch. You are the spark of light in the vastness of my night. His note, like a finality to a beautiful, breathtaking song.
And a breathtaking song it was. Hello. Good evening. At least I think it was breathtaking. We read that book a while ago. Pretty sure. How is everybody? I hope you're well. Oh, that's hot. Okay. Got my hot tea, and it is boiling. Nope, can't do it yet. Hi, Gemma. Well done redeeming first. How are you? Just delicious. Absolutely lovely. And Kay's here. Hi, Kay. How are you? Hopefully you're all right. Look at this fun puzzle. It's so colorful. Hi, Tacky. I'm sore and hurting right now from your procedure or something else. Either way, I hope you feel better soon. I'm okay taking a break from social media for mental health reasons, but I am okay. I can say I get that because I've done the same. Social media can be bleh sometimes. So many toxic people. It's my second day back to work. Okay, well, did they put you on like a restricted schedule or restricted work setup, perhaps, as you ease into things, perhaps? If not, I would strongly recommend looking into that because that could really help. Just 2 cents. That's all. But I hope it gets better. Lifting restrictions, but I sat at a desk all day. Not really lifting too much at a desk. That's a tricky one. Excuse me. I imagine it's probably from the positioning then. Well, I hope I hope it gets easier soon because I know what it's like to work after a surgery, and oosh, sometimes it's not fun, but it will get easier. It's just going to take some time, some patience, some grit, a little bit of that can-do, gemitude, also known as attitude, but you'll get there. I have faith in you. Gosh, yawning already. Nailing it. Ladies and gentlemen, we're on page 83 already. Can you believe that? 83. There's a link to the author. Go get that puzzle, Tacky. You can do this. I believe in you. You're gonna nail it. I think I need to take another sip before we switch over to reading. Oh, geez. You'll be fine. Good stuff. You know, something funny happened today. I was on a Zoom for work, talking with some colleagues, and my dog was like 3-4 feet behind me, and he just started going off. Gemma, what are you doing? 1,000 bits? I do not deserve that. Thank you. That was way too kind. Gemma. Thank you. You precious being. You did not have to do that. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. I normally only do the wheel spin for the subby stuff, but that deserves a wheel spin. Let's see what you get. Oh, you get to pick. Okay, Gemma. Would you like to add some squats, curls, push-ups, or hammer curls? You tell me, and I'll add it to the list. Thank you so much. That was way too kind of you. Squats, absolutely. And while we're here, oh, you're doing something. Oh. Well, that was a very interesting clip. You looked very serious. Hi, Katie. How are you? Messing with my layout there? Yeah, looked like you were trying to get it all set up. I could see the theme. Looked pretty cool. Gemma, thank you again for your generosity. That was incredibly kind. Incredibly kind. So now we've got squats and push-ups. You're good. I am glad to hear that. I am glad. We're just about to switch over to our reading scene so that we can get into your book. But I keep yawning. It will stop eventually. But my apologies. I haven't had that problem in a while where I just suddenly start yawning, but today just seems to be the day. I don't know. I'm fine, I swear. Aw, new Figgle. No sound on, but yay. Thank you. Now we need to do another wheel spin. Let's see. Push-ups. I like how I had to crank my neck to see that. Oops. I can't type. There we go. Push-ups. Okay. Thank you, Newfiggle. And that's Newfiggle is also a streamer, folks.
Where are they at? Oh shit. Damn. Oh fuck. Damn, I'm getting ready to die. Holy shit, there's people.
I'm getting ready to die. Aren't we all? In some small way. Aren't we all? You are absolutely welcome. And hi, Julie. How are you? Oh my gosh, there's a Huldra in here. You got that clip as I'm in panic mode? Oh dear. Damn internet crapping out, it's windy out there. See, this is why you need cables underground. Huldra, how are you? Folks, if you don't know one of my newest friends, Huldra, you should.
I can. There's not too. It's not too. Oh my god. It's not far to the old tower. Well, no.
She has a way with words, let me tell you. Julie, you've been all right. How about you? I am doing pretty well, thank you. Thank you for asking. I'm glad you are well. And Mama House Gaming, hello. My gosh, there's so many cool people in here. It's unbelievable. You guys are making my night. Words are hard. It's true. You know what else is hard? Steel. Steel is hard. It's true. All right. Do tell. Wouldn't you like to know? Get it together. We're here to read a book. Calm down. All right. As I was trying to say, we're on page 83. We're starting on chapter 11 this evening. Tacky's like, I'm just here for the puzzle. Don't mind me. But I also wanted to mention this little pop-up that just showed up on the screen. I will be reading a different book in just shy of 2 hours in Discord. Doing all right. I'm in bed and wanted to find someone to listen and lurk. Well, you've come to the right place. I'm here to help. And with that in mind, I'm going to take one last sip of my lovely hot tea. And then I'll read to you. This is an excellent book, by the way. Good tea. The author is in chat with us. If you do !someone, you'll get a link to the author page for KD. And you can see this book and many others that might tickle your fancy. But in the meantime, ladies and gentlemen, please sit back, relax, and I'll read you a story. After I clear my throat. Chapter 11, Irene Adler. At first light, I was showered and dressed. Holmes settled my hotel bill, advising the concierge his imaginary nephew, Horatio, would arrive later in the day to take over Watson's room. We then joined Watson for breakfast. Holmes handed the good doctor 2 letters, one addressed to Lestrade and the other to his brother Mycroft, happy that Watson would have them couriered to their prospective recipients as soon as he arrived in London. Later that morning, Watson, Holmes, and I arrived at Milano Central. Why did I say that weird? Milano Central. Watson and I boarded the train to London. We sat opposite one another in our first-class carriage. Sensing my anxiety, Watson tried to reassure me, patting my hand soothingly. "If you work with Holmes and support him, he will not let you down, my dear. You must trust him with your life." "I sincerely hope it doesn't come to that," I replied. Watson put his hand on my arm, his face a mask of concern. Leaning forward in his seat, Watson whispered in my ear, "There are things you need to be aware of before you venture on this journey with Holmes." He warned me of Holmes's bohemian habits, his brooding intensity, and his challenging demeanor. But at the same time, Watson assured me that I couldn't wish for a better protector. "Thank you," I said, squeezing his hand. "You have been most informative, but I don't want you to worry. I have been dealing with difficult men for most of my adult life. It could be worse." I laughed. "It's not as though Holmes and I are married. In fact, perish the thought." Little did I know those words would come back to haunt me. I left the train at Pavia, disguised as a slim youth. I wore an ulster, my hair tied up and concealed under a soft cap. I returned to the hotel as fast as the Hanson could bring me. Upon checking into my room, I changed into a light blue dress and applied a little makeup before joining Holmes for dinner next door in his private suite, accessed via a communicating door. And that was a very quick chapter 11. So she put on a dress, applied some makeup, and went into Watson's room for some dinner. How tantalizing. Quite interesting, considering we know how the story ends. Y'all need to let me make you a cup of tea sometime. I'm not trying to brag, I'm just saying. Chapter 12, Sherlock Holmes. After supper, I'm going to start that again. After supper, Irene Adler and I returned to the sitting room. Motioning to the sofa, I sat across from her on a hard-backed easy chair. "I beg you to tell me anything that comes to mind that may help this case." She nodded. "I would ask that you be patient, Mr. Holmes. My narrative may at times be a little shaky, especially after all that has transpired." Irene Adler spoke to me of her late husband's mental health issues, his opium addiction, and the trauma she endured after the burglary. I listened to her narrative with patience and scarcely an interruption up to that point. "Did the burglars take anything of value?" I quizzed. "I had a small casket where I kept my costume jewelry. It had been forced open, its contents discarded on the floor, although nothing was missing. The police found it all very strange, but unfortunately they were unable to apprehend the perpetrators." "There appears to be something of great value and importance to the perpetrators which has so far eluded them. However, after revealing your identity at La Scala, they now seem to have become focused on you, Miss Adler. Do you have any idea what they may have been looking for?" She shook her head. I have no idea, Mr. Holmes. Godfrey did become involved with some questionable types, I know that. But whatever he was hiding could not have been worth dying for, surely. And why would this Palmer want to kill me? I'm nothing to this man. She paused for a moment. I remember a man calling to see Godfrey at our home in Kensington. I only saw him from a distance, but I remember he had a distinctive scar on his left cheek, just here. She touched her own cheek and shuddered. He looked a nasty piece of work. Yes, indeed. Palmer is one of the most dangerous men in England, and also the main suspect in a jewelry heist that took place over 2 years ago in Belgravia. The victim of the crime was the renowned jeweler Andrew Muscroft. There was little doubt that Palmer was the main protagonist, but, unfortunately, the police were unable to pin anything on him. Ronald Pickering and Ernest Sarti, the 2 other gang members, were subsequently caught and arrested. They refused to give Palmer up. They said there is honor among thieves. Most likely they were afraid of what Palmer would do to them once released from Pentonville. I remember Andrew Muscroft. He was one of Godfrey's clients. Godfrey told me that they met at Newmarket Downs. Yes, indeed. On the day of the heist, the Muscrofts were enjoying a day out on the Newmarket Heath. Their horse, Flickering, won the Brunbury Cup by half a length. Yes, I remember Godfrey was there that day. He received a formal hospitality invitation. The Muscrofts and your husband were all there to cheer the horse on. How ironic that Muscroft's house in Belgravia was under siege at the fall of the flag. The perpetrators, aware the family would be away that day, and they would only have a couple of elderly servants to confront. They tied them up and thrust chloroform rags into their mouths. It would appear that your late husband and Palmer had some involvement with the missing carbuncle, the precious Alexandria diamond from Russia. The police never recovered the stone, for which a substantial reward was offered. It was fortunate for Andrew Muscroft that the London insurance company who put up the reward honored his claim. Of course, your husband had a first-rate alibi, having been invited by Muscroft to the races. Who would suspect him, a respectable lawyer, of being an accomplice? I know for certain it was the carbuncle they were after. Your husband's murder linked one event to the other, you see. I dare say they planned to wait until the coast was clear and then take the stone abroad to have it cut into pieces, which would make it easier to sell. I'm a methodical man, Miss Adler, as you will no doubt discover during our journey together. I see that you are meticulous in your line of work, as I am in mine, Mr. Holmes. I realize Godfrey was a lot of things, but I would not have had him down as a thief. Palmer was more than likely blackmailing your husband, and something went wrong. Whatever occurred between them, the stone is still missing and worth a queen's ransom. It would appear that Palmer is under the impression that you either had the diamond or are privy to its whereabouts. It would not sleep easy at night until he has it. He disappeared after your husband's murder, no doubt hiding within the darker recesses of the criminal underworld, furthermore. Your appearance at La Scala has drawn him out, and I'm afraid that you are his intended target. But take heart, Miss Adler. Palmer may think he's clever, but he is no criminal mastermind. Godfrey never discussed anything with me, I can assure you. I certainly know nothing of any precious stone. I wear little jewelry, Mr. Holmes, and mainly only paste when performing. Amongst my most treasured possessions is the brooch I presented with at La Scala before I took up the position of prima donna in Warsaw, and my late mother's wedding ring, which I wear on my right hand. Neither of these items hold great monetary value, but they have precious sentimental value. Jewelry and diamonds, life's trappings, are of little interest to me. If Godfrey became involved in a jewelry heist, it was certainly not for my benefit. Your innocence was never in doubt to me, Miss Adler. As far as I am concerned, your word is inviolate. Inviolate. Palmer is a complex character. He once was a skilled draftsman and earned an honest living. He has already been in jail for assaulting a man over a game of cards because he bit off his ear. Hence his nickname, Wild Bill Palmer. I smiled at her gently. Palmer was known for frequenting a notorious opium den in Whitechapel. If your husband accompanied him there, as I suspect he did, he would have become putty in Palmer's hands. Men like Palmer are adept at exploiting weak links. But you must not fear. We will put matters right. Mr. Holmes, I'm neither afraid nor hysterical, and not usually prone to fainting. She smiled softly. I can handle whatever there is to come, but you are right, of course. There are things from my past that you need to know. They are memories that continue to haunt me. I leaned forward in my chair with a look of the utmost curiosity. You have my full attention, Miss Adler. Pray, please continue and give me all the facts. You have my word that your narrative will go no farther than these four walls. She took a deep breath, lowering her eyes, speaking almost in a whisper. Godfrey unveiled his way into my affections at a time when I was vulnerable. Of course, I adored him, but I was not in love with him. From what I can remember, Norton was a rather handsome devil. He was a devil, all right. And you're right, he was handsome. But it wasn't his looks that attracted me to Godfrey. I liked him. I found him charismatic and interesting. Wilhelm Ornstein told me much the same thing when he discovered you were married. He said she could not love him. Those were his exact words. I'm sorry to interrupt you. Pray do continue. You have my full attention. Well, Wilhelm got that right at least, she scoffed. Godfrey offered me the comfort I needed at the time. However, it turned out to be cold comfort in the end. I told Godfrey I wasn't in love with him. I felt I owed him that. He said he didn't care. He was certain I would eventually learn to love him. He told me I should always remember that the most important thing in a successful marriage was stability, which I thought was an odd thing to say at the time. Anyway, I married him, as you are aware, Mr. Holmes. She stared at me pointedly. I returned her gaze with an amused expression. You knew, I exclaimed. Oh, not at first, Mr. Holmes, but later when I followed you to Baker Street and rather impudently wished you good night, I saw your face under the street lamp. Your eyes gave it away, those windows to the soul. Anyway, I digress. Things were good between Godfrey and me until we returned to London, and that's when his behavior began to change. That caused our marriage to unravel. Godfrey drank a great deal of brandy, he smoked incessantly, and not just tobacco. She smiled ruefully. My husband was predisposed to fits of anger. He functioned perfectly well during the day, and as his intellect was never affected. However, when Godfrey had drunk whiskey and taken opium in the evenings, he became a monster. Once he lifted me off the floor by my throat, and I truly believed he would kill me that night. And I embraced the thought of it. Since that time, I have held no fear of dying. I finally plucked up the courage to tell Godfrey I intended to leave him. He broke down completely. He admitted he had mistreated me, and he had been unfaithful. I was already aware that he had another woman. She shook her head. I appear to have quite a skill for choosing habitual philanderers. Godfrey would not allow me to leave him. He didn't want anything to come out, you see, or for his employers to discover what he was. To the outside world, Godfrey was a man of class and position. Moreover, he expected to become a partner in the law firm within the year. He needed me to maintain that facade. I realized our marriage was just a cover for his profanities. She paused for a moment, taking a deep breath. And then, I'm afraid, things got very bleak. After I threatened to leave him again, Godfrey attacked me. But this time it was much worse. He forced himself upon me, and I was less than nothing to him. Irene Adler paused for a moment. She swallowed hard, looking me in the eyes. Her pain was palpable to see. Her narrative had stunned me into raised eyebrows silence. I rose from my chair and poured a glass of water from the pitcher, handing it to her without saying a word. She sipped from the glass before continuing her conversation. Godfrey told me the only way I would get out of our marriage would be in a coffin. I glanced over at her. She was deathly pale. But did you have no one to confide in? I didn't see the point in burdening other people, fearful that I would put them at risk. I have no relatives in England. Thanks to Godfrey, I had lost contact with my friends. I only had my father, and I did not want to burden him as he is not in good health. I sat back in my chair, my head sunk in my hands. He subjected you to an unimaginable life of terror. I can't even imagine how harrowing it must have been for you. The situation became so bad that suicide crossed my mind. And that wasn't a cry for help. I just wanted it to be over. I considered all the ways to do it. Then I discovered I was with child, and that changed everything. I wanted my child to live in a happy environment without hate or negativity. So what did I do? I decided to leave Godfrey for good and return to New Jersey. I wrote to my father. He arranged to come to London to help me move. I knew if I stayed any longer, I would die. That was such a low point in my life, Mr. Holmes. That was incredibly brave of you. It is when we are pushed to our limit that we realize what we are capable of. I discovered an inner strength I never knew I had. Then I found out Palmer murdered my husband 2 days before my father arrived in London. I remember Inspector Lestrade calling round to the house in Kensington to inform me. The first thing I felt was relief. Then I came back from the morgue and broke down completely. Even after everything that transpired between us, my husband did not deserve to die in that way. I lost my child on the day of Godfrey's funeral. My daughter was born silent, Mr. Holmes. She fought so hard to make it into the world. Unfortunately, she only lived for a short time, too tiny to be viable. But before she passed away, she opened her eyes for a moment, and they were the most vivid, beautiful blue eyes. All I have left of her is a photograph and a lock of hair. I called her Rosemary Blue, Rosemary for remembrance. There's an unimaginable grief that comes over you when someone you love dies before your eyes, and you're too powerless to stop it. But at least Rosemary is at peace now, and she lives on in my heart. I assume you don't have any children, Mr. Holmes? Sadly not, Miss Adler. I never married. Then forgive me, but I don't see how you can understand what I went through, and I hope to God that you never do. I later discovered I had a medical condition. The chances of my conceiving again are negligible. After I learned that, I was barely functional. I sat back in my chair, my head sunk into a cushion. I had opened my eyes and glanced over at her. Miss Adler, the harrowing ordeals you have endured at the hands of your late husband, the shocking abuse, the sadness and loss of a precious child, you have shown remarkable courage under great adversity. The depression that followed was the most profound and darkest period of my life. I felt an emptiness that has never left me. You must have despised your husband. No, I didn't despise him. That is such a strong word. I would never allow bitterness to overshadow my life. But sadness, well, that's another thing entirely. No, I don't hate anyone, Mr. Holmes, not even Godfrey. Although I'm still shocked and saddened by what he became, I have forgiven him. In many ways, Godfrey was as much a victim as I was, tortured by his demons. When our lives on earth are over and all our worldly cares are through, all our petty disagreements and our unwillingness to forgive others will come back to haunt us. They will become maggots that devour our very souls. Time can be a great healer, I said. In my experience, time does not heal. It merely accommodates. She met my gaze. I want to thank you, Mr. Holmes, for listening to my narrative. It is good to have the opinion of someone I admire and respect, but I don't want you to think of me as an object of pity. I am hardly Tess of the de Ubervilles. I may no longer be able to hold my daughter, but she is with me every day. She brushed away the tears that sentiment had evoked, staring at me hard. Tell me, Mr. Holmes, what do you see when you look at me? I see someone who is lost in grief that engulfs you like a shroud. I smiled at her sympathetically. I find it outrageous that you've been the victim of another person's controlling behavior. Bruises heal. It's the psychological damage that endures. We will see this through together. Of that, I have no doubt. I knew we needed to take the road least traveled to escape Palmer's cronies. I wiped a tear from my eye, contemplating for a moment. Irene Adler's narrative had touched me deeply. I took a sip of whiskey from my glass before refilling Irene Adler's wineglass. We sat in quiet reflection for a while, barely speaking. This is a dreadful business, Miss Adler. Rest assured, I will be making vigorous inquiries with the assistance of Watson, Inspector Lestrade, and my brother Mycroft. I have asked them to garner specific data. When this is at hand, I will have a clearer picture of what we're dealing with. But unfortunately, this may take some time. In the meantime, I need to get you to a safe house, somewhere quiet and unassuming. We shall be staying with my dear friends the Espiritos and Florence at a secluded farm. That is the place I first stayed after my confrontation with Professor Moriarty at the Reichenbach Falls. It is, in my opinion, the safest place to take you now. I have messaged ahead, telling them to expect us tomorrow. Rexter, you have a clear picture too? We will use a separate barn conversion away from the main house. There are a handful of domestic servants. However, I'm afraid there will be no lady's maid. You will have to dress on your own for the foreseeable future. We will, after all, be residing on a working farm. I'm sure I will manage. Thank you, Mr. Holmes. She stared at me curiously. Taking me to this farm must bring back memories of what you have been, or what must have been a terrible ordeal for you. What you went through with Moriarty. Yes, it was indeed the worst of times, but I recovered. And thankfully, London is now a safer place, devoid of that Napoleon of crime. But unfortunately, his brother, Colonel Moriarty, took against me, vowing revenge as he held me responsible for Professor Moriarty's death. He suffered a mental breakdown over 3 years ago and was incarcerated in Belem Mental Asylum in St. George's Field, Lambeth. Ever since, I dread to think what that man would be capable of if he were ever released. I stared at her intently. There was one other thing, Miss Adler. And what is that? She asked. This is my plan, I continued, my voice low and intense. First, I have informed the Espiritos that we are married. She stared at me in utter astonishment, turning pale. I'm sorry, she said. But the very thought of being married to anyone ever again makes my stomach churn. Is this elaborate deception entirely necessary? Yes, I'm afraid it must be so. Let me explain. We must avoid any scandal or small-town gossip. I honor the truth. However, now and again, a little deception is necessary. Only my friend Ludo Esperato will be aware of the pretense. I have not taken this decision lightly, Miss Adler. I must ensure this family's safety as well as our own. I hope you understand my position. She nodded. Yes, I understand. That will not be a problem. But, to quote Bard, all the world's a stage. We all have our entrances and exits, our parts to play. If I am under the pretense of being your wife, then you must call me Irene. However, I am affectionately known as Neen. Then that's what I shall call you. I flashed her a somewhat uneasy smile. We must maintain continuity and alleviate ourselves from any undue suspicion. Then I suppose I must call you Sherlock, unless you too have a preferred nickname. No, I don't, I curtly replied. You may call me Sherlock. You may call me Sherlock. That wasn't an invitation. I would advise you get a good night's sleep, Miss Adler. We shall find that we have a rather long and complex day ahead of us. I gently place my hand on her forearm, patting it consolingly. I realize you have endured a great deal. The road ahead will not be an easy one. We must be vigilant. I want you to know, Mr. Holmes, that I appreciate your sagacious comments and your kindness. You are quite a friend. My pleasure, Miss Adler. You can rely on me to do all I can. I have arranged for a carriage to collect us in the morning. If you can make sure your luggage is ready for the porter, shall we say 7 o'clock? We shall have breakfast on the train. I escorted Miss Adler towards the connecting door and opened it for her. Oh, Miss Adler, there is one more thing. You will need to travel in disguise until we get to Fiesole, just as a precaution. You understand. She raised an eyebrow. Horatio? She quizzed. Splendid, I replied. God help you in your undertaking, Mr. Holmes. You know you are an inherently decent man. I nodded. Good night, Miss Adler. I retired to bed, aware of the fact that Irene Adler and I would once again have to put our acting skills to good use. I had never imagined in my wildest dreams that I would turn out to be her knight in shining armor, our paths crossing once again. And that brings us to the end of chapter 12. I gotta say, KD, you do a fantastic job with dialogue. The back and forth conversation between the two of them. I find that personally one of the more difficult things to do in story writing is to hold a conversation is one thing, but like a really good conversation that helps drive the story as well. I struggle with that, but I think you did a smashing job. Well done. Rexter, how are you? It's great to see you. Sexy voice too. Stop it. You doing well? Glad to hear it. I'm still annoyed that you postponed your trip, though. But you got to do what you got to do. That I can understand. How about you? I am doing well. I'm doing well. I spent about 3 hours today assembling the last piece of furniture that we should need to assemble, hopefully. So yeah. Other than that, things are good. I ordered another 23 pallets. Good Lord. Pallets of what?
Is it hot in here?
It is.
Hot? I mean, you are hot.
It's a little warm, but it's not too bad. Computer parts. Okay. 23 pallets of computer parts. Man, that must have been a small fortune. Jeez. Computer parts are not cheap right now. You love building furniture? Me too. It's kind of fun to see it all come together. $137,000. Ooh. Dang. Yeah, I like to call it adult-sized Legos. The first shipment was 142,000. Jeez. That's some hefty stuff. That is hefty stuff. Corgi, you're doing a great job on the puzzle, by the way. Keep going. All right. Hopefully, our friends from overseas are sleeping now. We shall see. I am almost out of everything, so thank God. It's color-coded. It is. That's why I picked it. It's nice and pinks, reds, yellows, greens, blues, purples. Or something like that. Gold. You're doing great. Alrighty. Oh, that felt good. Just popped my neck. Oh. Ooh. It's the best kind of crack there is. So, Sherlock Holmes and Irene Adler are going to escape to the countryside and live life as a married couple on a working farm. Why do I feel like something bad's going to happen when they get there? Or maybe not like literally when they get there, but while they are there. Because that just screams problem. I guess we'll see. Is everyone ready for the next chapter? I'm ready for more of this tea, though. Delicious. Delicious and absolutely boiling hot. I love a good cup warmer. Fantastic invention. Kudos. All right. Chapter 13 starts on page 96 of the printed copy. Irene Adler's perspective. I'm ready. You're doing a terrific job. Thank you, madam. K.D. Sherringford is our author, ladies and gentlemen. These are not my words, they are hers, and she is a fantastic writer. Off we go. Chapter 13. I was ready and waiting when the carriage arrived the following morning. Finally, the coachman pulled up at Milano Central Railway Station at precisely 8. We boarded the train, making our way to our first-class carriage. Holmes spoke briefly to the porter, who secured our luggage through to Fiesole. The train eventually pulled out of the station. Holmes had little to offer in the way of conversation, appearing deep in thought. I was not yet aware that this was a potent, that is not the word, that this was a portent of things to come. I assumed myself by, wow, I'm just nailing it. I amused myself by reading a novel. We're totally fine. We're gonna nail the words, okay? Yep. Sunlight fell upon the carriage window as I looked out at endless fields and a melancholy cottage, as yet another station within, I need to bend the book a little bit. Just make up your own story, it's fine. Once upon a time, in a world full of danger and magical creatures. No, I'm just kidding. Sunlight fell upon the carriage window as I looked out at endless fields and a melancholy cottage, as yet another station with an indecipherable name streaked past. Finally, luncheon arrived and Holmes, at last, put down his newspaper. Words are hard, Gemma. It's a thing. You appear to be reading the newspapers rather diligently this morning, I said, determined to try and communicate with him, anything to break this languorous spell. I seldom read anything except criminal news and the agony column. The latter is invariably the most informative. Holmes smiled dryly, glancing over at my novel, Jane Eyre. His lip curled. You surprise me, Miss Adler. I would not have suspected you to be one of those young ladies reading romantic fiction, yearning for Prince Charming to come along to sweep her off her feet. I stared at Holmes with amused surprise, pondering if I could use this opportunity to understand him further. He was like a closed book to me. He could be sociable, it's true, but only when it suited him. Moreover, he had never married, which was unusual for a man of his age. Nevertheless, I was determined to try and get to know him better. It is the titular heroine herself who fascinates me, Mr. Holmes. I am quite in awe of her rebellious spirit and... Oh, yes. Her rebellious spirit and humility. And as for the Byronic protagonist, well, he is most certainly no Prince Charming, I can assure you. I may have dreamed of a fairy tale ending when I was a young girl. However, I quickly learned not to expect them. Holmes cracked a dry smile as I glanced down at the book on my lap. I first read this novel when I was 15 years old. I'm still completely enthralled by it. I was instantly captivated, not only by Jane Eyre's story, which is rife with betrayal, but I was fascinated by Charlotte Brant's introspection of the protagonist. Aloof, intelligent, and sarcastic. His mercurial character often prone to multiplicity. And as a consequence, his personality changes, abrupt and brusque. His narrative is often offensive and offhand, described by the housekeeper as a peculiar character, yet underneath all that lies an inwardly sensitive and passionate soul. Holmes stared at me. Although his smile was sardonic, his eyes held a glint of humor. Forgive me, Miss Adler. I did not realize you were such a leading authority on the Bront sisters. In my humble opinion, Charlotte Bront is the most gifted, I said. I find her work individualism and richness refreshingly different to the other writers. As for the Prince Charming, well, as we all know, he simply does not exist. I have already met one prince, Mr. Holmes, and he proved to be anything but charming. I'm a prolific reader, said Holmes, although I am not in the habit of reading works of romantic fiction. We continued the rest of the journey in silence. His breathtakingly caustic observations had done little for my confidence. His reluctance to extend elementary pleasantries astounded me at times. I felt as though I had embarked on a journey with two different people. Holmes pulled his billycock hat down over his eyes. I glanced across at his proud, unyielding mask, dignity showing on every line of his face. I was beginning to have grave reservations at the prospect of spending so much time alone with Sherlock Holmes. The remainder of the train journey was far from pleasant. The carriage was hot and humid, my traveling companion moody and silent, barely speaking save an occasional grunt or sardonic remark. Later that afternoon, I breathed a sigh of relief when the train finally terminated at Santa Mona railway station. We disembarked to the sound of birdsong and chirping crickets. The sky was clear. The warm afternoon sun beat down. A brougham and a pair of splendid greys awaited us. Holmes looked relieved at the familiar sight of his old friend Ludo Espirito, with his shock of black wavy hair, great, earnest blue eyes, and clean-shaven face. He broke into a wide grin upon seeing Holmes, and me approached the brougham. And I forgot to check the ads, but apparently there's one about to start in less than 30 seconds. So, just to be safe, I'm going to put my finger on the page, and I'm going to pause so we can let the ads play. That way, nobody misses anything. Okay. And off they go. All right. Plus, this is always a good opportunity to sip some tea. Yes. Quite delightful. Tell you, I don't know what's going on upstairs, but you probably can't hear it, but it sounds like someone's trying to break through. Waits for ads. Tacky, are you not getting any ads? I mean, I'm glad you're not. Ads suck. Nobody likes ads. No one. But it still says, oh, Gemma had one. Just the one? Was it at least interesting? Was it at least somewhat amusing? Ads are evil, though had none here. I don't understand Twitch. I really don't. Meow Mix. Oh, wow. That's amazing. All right, well, ads are just about finished. So we shall continue with our story. Holmes greeted his friend warmly. He shook his hand heartily and slapped him on the shoulder, all traces of irritation erased from his face. "How are you, my dear fellow?" said Holmes. "It does my heart good to see you again, although I wish it were under less trying circumstances." Holmes quietly introduced me to Ludo. "It's a pleasure to meet you," said Ludo, touching the brim of his hat. "Please forgive me if my English is a little coarse. My daughter Ava is quite a fan. She can hardly wait to meet you." I smiled back at Ludo. His courteous manner and genuine warmth immediately put me at ease. The porter loaded the luggage onto the brougham, engaging in a little friendly banter with Ludo. Holmes tipped the porter before I stepped into the carriage, whilst he sat at the front of the brougham. Ludo picked up the reins, and our journey to Le Sol had begun. The men spoke along the way, Holmes no doubt updating Ludo on the events that had transpired so far. I was grateful the carriage had 3 sides, giving me the opportunity to change out of my disguise, which I deftly removed to reveal a dove silk dress. Then I reached into my valise, removed my shoes, bonnet, fan, and parasol, now transformed into the more than respectable Mrs. Irene Holmes. I used a hand mirror to apply my makeup, sighing as I placed my mother's wedding ring on the 3rd finger of my left hand, a necessary ploy in my mockery of marriage to Sherlock Holmes. "Oh, forgive me, Mama," I whispered. I felt warm from the heat of the sun and the burden of the additional clothing. I closed my eyes, allowing the hazy late afternoon sun to wash over me. The distance to the farmhouse was approximately 4 miles. The brougham climbed up the steep hill with the city on one side and the spectacular panoramic views of the countryside and plain. The carriage passed several vineyards dotted with ancient hamlets and a scattering of picturesque Renaissance-style villas. Eventually, the brougham rounded a steep bend which brought us into a long, winding lane. Just ahead, set back in the beautiful hills of Tuscany, stood the isolated grey stone detached farmhouse, Lissol. The brougham continued until the farmhouse appeared straight in front of us. A giant antique terracotta sundial stretched in front of two wrought iron gates that closed the entrance. On the right-hand side stood two hedges of lavender and a path leading to the stables. Beyond the stables were aromatic fields of saffron, grain, and barley, and a large orchard. To the far end of the orchard stood an apiary containing 8 cedarwood beehives housing 500,000 bees, next to which stood a large wooden shed serving as a storage area and shop. The paddock's rear was a wildflower meadow, brimming with cowslip, knapweed, buttercups, ox-eye daisy, and an abundance of clover. God, I bet it smelled amazing over there. The brougham pulled up outside the farmhouse. A scented breeze wafted over my face as I stepped out of the carriage. Lifting the handle of my parasol, I glanced around the courtyard, taking in my surroundings. Holmes offered a reassuring nod. I barely noticed, focusing on the task at hand. Holmes had set the stage. The first act was about to commence, and I was the leading lady. Ludo quickly beckoned 2 farmhands to tend to the horses and deliver the luggage to the barn before being raided. Bless your heart. Bless your heart. I'm going to lose my place in the book. Lit Go Games. Lit. Thank you for the raid. How was the rest of your stream? Master Corgi, hello. Walking Stick, hello. Iron Ruby Gaming, hi. Here to look, absolutely no problem. Oh my god, she is right, Voice of Silk. Thank you very much. Hi, lovely, stoked to drop in on you. I am so beyond words right now. I can't even say what I want to say because, gosh, thank you so much. Let me make sure we get you a shout out. Lit is a new friend of mine.
You can, like, Empire State Building and not die?
Yeah, it says it would fall damage.
God damn it, fucking Jesus Christ, John. Yep.
Stream was good, trooped around Valheim, and managed to not get murdered. Fantastic. It's always a plus when you don't get murdered. That's what I say. Seriously, though, thank you for rating me. I know you teased about it earlier, but I didn't actually think you were serious, so my gosh, I am honored. For those of you that do not know who I am the Bookfather, voice actor, and reading streamer. Occasionally, we play a couple of games here and there when we're between books. But right now, we are, well, in the thick of a fantastic book. It's called Song for Someone, written by the author who is hanging out here in chat. Iron, thank you for the follow. Welcome in. She is always serious about rating someone. Well, now I know. What book? I will give you a link. The link in chat is to the author page. But the book we are reading right now is called Song for Someone. It's basically how Sherlock Holmes and Irene Adler came to be as a couple, as an item. And it's fantastic. Loving it. You're much faster than I am tonight. I'm just on it. Thank you, though. Oh, absolutely. You love Sherlock? Good. Well, thank you, everybody. I am blessed. I am blessed. If you need to get going, though, I totally understand. If not, and you want to hang out for a couple of minutes, please, by all means, get comfortable. I'm going to keep reading. We just got into a new chapter. Hey, Mad Locust. How are you? There's the T-Rex. Ah. I see what you did there. Thank you so much for the raid. I'm so excited to have you here. Grab my noms and tuck myself in for a listen. Fantastic. Good God. Okay. Thank you, Gemma. Thank you. Do you know sometimes when you forget that you have those sounds? That's pretty much what just happened. Okay, well, anyone that was asleep might not be now. My innocent listening ears. Okay, well, I've definitely lost my place, but that's not a shock. Right. Oh, yeah. And she was like, and I was the leading lady. Okay, here we go. We're on page 100. So, tuck in. I'm going to read you a story. Ludo quickly beckoned 2 farmhands to tend to the horses and deliver the luggage to the barn before ushering us through the heavy-set front door and into a large oak-paneled hallway. We continued through a mahogany door into a good-sized, well-appointed drawing room with a large, old-fashioned open fireplace. Salty, thank you for the follow. I appreciate you. There were 2 sofas, a chaise lounge, and a sideboard adorned with ornaments and family photographs. An abundance of light streamed through 2 pairs of French windows that forced out onto established gardens. The wooden floors were highly polished and covered with Aubusson rugs. Very fancy rugs. Holmes moved forward to take Violetta Esperato's hand as well as that of her daughter Ava. Finally, he introduced the ladies to me. My dears. Violetta greeted us effusively, kissing us on both cheeks. In her late 30s, Violetta was an attractive woman of medium height with long, dark hair tied up in a knot. She wore a blue velvet dress trimmed with cream-colored lace. A walking stick. Thank you for the follow. You guys are fantastic. Making my night. Twinkling almond-colored eyes that were bright and full of life stared back at me from an intelligent, well-defined face. Holmes then introduced me to Violetta's daughter, Ava, a striking olive-skinned girl of 16, or so, with a smattering of freckles, tall and willowy with braided soft light brown hair. Her long curling eyelashes and magnetic blue eyes looked at me before her face broke into a smile as sweet as summer pear. Even at such a tender age, the elegance and femininity of her features were evident to see. Ava wore a blue and white gingham dress and a straw bonnet with a matching silk ribbon. She gave a slight bow, gazing at me in awe, as if I was the most exciting person to ever arrive in Fiesole. I am so pleased to meet you. I am quite a fan of the opera, stuttered Ava. Thank you, Ava. I smiled warmly at the girl. You are very kind. The pleasure is all mine. Violetta gestured towards the chaise lounge. Holmes and I took a seat beside one another. I gently squeezed his arm. What? Gemma? My gosh, gifting 5 subs. What are you doing? You did the bits before. Now you did the jump scare and now you're doing subs. My goodness. You are being too much. I need to put a bookmark in. For those of you that don't know, every time a sub happens, I spin this little wheel that's above my head. And that forces me to do some sort of workout because staying in shape is a good thing. I need to spin that sucker 5 times. Gemma, you are too much for me. You are too much. Sprelly, Snipin, Mitchell, Bubblies, Julie, I hope you all enjoy your subscription, your no ads, although never really sure when Twitch does ads to begin with. But either way, guaranteed now. Let's start spinning the wheel. My gosh. 5 squats. Okay. So we're going to add, if I can type. All right, now I owe 10 squats, so that's cool. So that's the first one. Gemma, you're crazy. Push-ups. Push-ups. Okay, that's 2. Here comes number 3. More squats. All right, guess we're growing a butt today. We're growing some ass. Here comes number 4. Streamer picks. Fantastic. We don't have any curls yet. Let's spread it out. Only if it was that easy, right? All right, last one. Gemma, Oh, Gemma, you get to pick the last one. How fitting. What would you like to add? You tell me, and I'll do it. I will do it. Hammer. You got it. I mean, that makes sense. We don't have any of those. Okay, so we got 15 squats, 5 curls, 5 hammer curls, and 15 push-ups. That's not bad. That's a pretty good, well-rounded little workout there. Once we finish this chapter, we will do those. Gosh, Gemma, thank you so much. Now do me a favor. Let's sit on your hands. I've completely lost my place. Oh, yeah. I gently squeezed his arm. That's where we left it. I was about to say before that happened, for the folks that are new here that may not realize this, I don't read ahead with the books that I'm reading on stream.
She hadn't made a milkshake in years, for fear that they would return. She starts the blender reluctantly. In the distance, screams. The boys had returned. They were coming to her yard.
That's right. That's why girls don't make milkshakes anymore. Because they're coming. Thank you, Gemma. These books that I'm reading on stream, I never read ahead. Everything I am reading right now, not only are you hearing it for the first time, but technically so am I. So, just wanted you to know that. Fun little fact. But what about smoothies with milk? Ooh, that might confuse them. But eventually, I think they'll figure it out. Eventually. Thank you for the hype train. You guys... Unreal. Darn right, stay off my lawn. No boys allowed. All right. Let me continue the story. Otherwise, we're never going to get to the end of this chapter. You crazy bunch. We are delighted to see you again, Mr. Holmes, said Violetta in her well-defined Florentine dialect. And to meet you, of course, Mrs. Holmes, my dear. She gestured to me. You must be tired. What a monotonous journey it must have been for you. May we offer you some light refreshments before tea? A small sherry, perhaps? She beamed at her husband. Curo mio, she said, gesturing to the sherry on the sideboard. Shh, that's supposed to be a secret. Vita mia, he replied, pouring the sherry. We gladly accepted a glass of dry sherry. Then the domestic servants entered the drawing room, bringing afternoon tea with cucumber sandwiches, scones, cream, honey, and saffron cake. Violetta asked if I would prefer tea or coffee. Well, I am American, I said. I much prefer coffee to tea, although admittedly, I do drink far too much of it. This afternoon, I would quite like a cup of tea. So I watched as Violetta poured the tea into white china cups. I accepted a teacup of black Earl Grey with a slice of lemon, while Holmes took his with milk and sugar. Just like I take mine. Because that's just how you do it. That's the English way. All right, I digress. Tell us, Mrs. Holmes, do you prefer the country or the city? Ludo quizzed. I believe I'm a country girl at heart, Mr. Espirito. I love to be surrounded by nature, although I must admit there are times when I do miss the sheer excitement of the city. May I ask how you and Mr. Holmes met? Was it love at first sight? Ava asked excitedly. Holmes spluttered into his teacup, mopping up the spilt liquid with a napkin. I gave a melancholy smile. I can honestly say that when I met my husband at La Scala, I was completely swept off my feet. Oh, that is so romantic. Is it not, Mama? Asked Ava. Yes, indeed, it is very romantic, Violetta replied. How many staff do you have, Mrs. Espirito? I asked in an attempt to change the subject. Oh, please do call me Violetta. Well, let me see. We have 2 domestic servants who live in the farmhouse, the Ancans who stay in the cottage next door. They've been with us ever since we got married nearly 20 years ago. Violetta smiled at her husband. Gabriella Anca is our primary housekeeper. She'll be attending to you and Mr. Holmes during your stay with us. Gabriella's husband, Giovanni, performs a few light duties. He mainly attends to the bees. In addition, we cultivate and sell honey, mead, and beeswax in our little farm shop. Yes, of course, said Holmes. I remember the apiary from my last visit. I've always harbored a longing to keep bees. They are such fascinating creatures. You must go and see Giovanni after you have settled in.
I'm lurking now.
Hey, Alan and the Bilduck, thank you for the lurk. He'll be delighted to see you again. A fledgling fellow apiarist, said Ludo. Thank you. I'll look forward to paying him a visit, Holmes replied. Violetta continued her conversation with me. Good evening, hope you're well. I am. I hope you are well, sir. It's good to see you. The Ancas' nephew, Javier, is staying with them for the summer. He's a fine young man, a student at the conservatory in Florence. Javier helps out every year with the harvesting and general odd jobs around the farm, and so do a few other boys from the village. The fruit-picking season is a short one, although our modest orchard produces over 70 tons of fruit each season. You have a busy household then, I said. Well, yes, it can get a bit hectic, especially at this time of year. Violetta smiled at us. You need to rest. Would you like to go through to the barn and see where you'll be staying? I shall send Clarissa over to help you unpack. After that, we would like you to join us for dinner tomorrow at 8. There will be just the 5 of us. We cannot wait to hear about the wedding. We are all rather intrigued. Oh, please say you will come, pleaded Ava. Oh, we would love to. Wouldn't we, darling? I said, looking over at Holmes. Yes, of course, he replied. It's the least we can do for your kind hospitality. Violetta and Ava escorted us to the barn, situated 100 feet from the main house. Violetta told me the barn had been converted into accommodation over 30 years ago. The structure looked charming in the sunlight. Painted yellow, baskets of fern and honeysuckle adorned the doorway. Crossing the threshold, we entered a large drawing room with a separate dining area. My eyes immediately took in the gaping fireplace with a lovely arrangement of spring flowers, daffodils, crocus, and gladoli. Violetta had furnished the room with an elegant collection of furniture. A chaise lounge, two tufted Moroccan easy chairs with colorful throws, an occasional table, a mahogany dining table with 4 chairs, and a sideboard nestled in the far corner of the room, well stocked with wine, whiskey, port, and sherry. A small bookcase and a gramophone were at the far end of the room. The polished wooden floors were all covered with Persian rugs. The drawing room boasted a grand piano draped with a dust sheet. I pulled back the cover to look closer and was astounded to discover an original Fazioli constructed in 1881, an astonishing piece of work. I ran my fingers over the keys, frowning at the unwavering sound. However, I was disappointed to find the piano was badly out of tune. Violetta explained the piano belonged to her late father. They had moved into the barn after he died in the event any guests felt inclined to play. I explored the rest of the barn. A small kitchen contained a table and chairs, while a study lay to the rear. Holmes said he was familiar with the room and the hours he had spent writing and contemplating. The study was, as he remembered, a small chamber lined on 2 sides with books, a writing desk, and a chair facing the window that looked out over the garden. I was relieved to find 2 double-bed chambers, each with adjoining bathrooms, their walls varnished, and the floors covered with dark cork tiles. Each bedchamber had a double white counterpane bed, mahogany bedset and headboard, a brown chest of drawers matching wardrobe, a dressing table close to the window, and a plain wooden chair next to each bed. The windows opened out onto a lawn. We wandered outside to look at the enclosed rear garden, which was picture perfect. Sea green grasses with pots of coral geraniums, purple and lemon petunias, heliotrope, jasmine, and honeysuckle trailing down the walls. Our senses were stirred by a wave of fragrance and the aromatic odors of rosemary, lavender, and roses. The barn had an attached wooden veranda with a canopy and patio area, holding a table with comfortable-looking wicker chairs and cushions. To the left of the main farmhouse lay another terrace and patio. its tables and benches overlooking the stupendous Tuscan landscapes and the old Etruscan village of Fiesole. God, I want to visit this place. It sounds amazing. Violetta handed Holmes the keys to the barn, assuring him that Ludo had followed his instructions to the letter and attached 2 double padlocks to the mullioned window frames. An iron crossbar secured the front door. With Clarissa's assistance, we spent the rest of the afternoon unpacking. When we had finished, Clarissa drew me a bath. Before returning to the farmhouse. After a relaxing soak, I dried and powdered myself, dabbing eau de parfum onto my neck and behind my ears. I slipped into a nightdress of green brocade and tied my hair up in a knot before entering the kitchen. Pouring lemonade into 2 glasses, I took them outside onto the terrace. Holmes joined me on the patio, dressed in a dark suit and waistcoat. He took a seat across from me. We looked out onto the garden, which seemed beautiful and tranquil in the late afternoon sun. I drew Holmes's attention to the sky. We had both been disturbed by the hauntingly beautiful sounds of the swifts circling and screaming overhead, swooping with magnificent grace. We laughed at their antics, marveling at their stunning performance against the backdrop of a majestic Tuscan sunset. Stun Mama's mama, you made it. Welcome in. I'm glad to see you made it. Aren't they beautiful? I whispered. Yes, beautiful, said Holmes. We continued to watch the swifts until the sun began to set. One by one, the birds retired for the night, nesting peripherally on the eaves of the inner roofs of the stables. I think it must be time for dinner, I said. Holmes nodded in agreement as we entered the barn to find the housekeeper, Gabriella, had arrived with a supper consisting of roast lamb, potatoes, garden vegetables, and fresh fruit from the orchard. I gotta cut out. Good night, y'all. Good night, Kay. Thank you for being here. I hope you have a peaceful rest tonight. Gabriella served us. She was a diminutive, slightly framed woman in her mid-60s, gray-haired with suspicious brown sidelong eyes and a pair of gold pince-nez that rested at the tip of her nose. We waited until Gabriella's bonnet had passed the window before we retired once more to the terrace on the patio. The gentle breeze and the moonlight cut through the trees, making for a perfect place to relax. I sighed. There's something almost spiritual about being surrounded by natural beauty, don't you think, Mr. Holmes? It brings out the melancholy in me. Holmes agreed. He poured me a glass of wine and a whiskey and soda for himself. Removing a cigar from a silver case, he pointed to it. Do you object to my smoking, Miss Adler? Feeling my addictions is indeed a filthy habit. However, I truly believe that it enhances my capacity to work. I took a sip of my wine. No, not at all, Mr. Holmes. King Borthole, Your Majesty, thank you for the follow. Please, do go ahead. My father smokes cigars. I've always found the distinctive smell of tobacco to be somewhat comforting. I do not. Cigars make me want to vomit. Wiggles eyebrows. Hey. Wiggle back at you. Welcome in. Good to see you. I want to thank you again for keeping me safe. You know it fills me with hope to see Ludo and Violetta together. The way he looks at her after 20 years is quite remarkable. Violetta is a lucky woman. Indeed, said Holmes. A more united couple would be difficult to find. A peal of thunder suddenly flashed across the Tuscan sky. It looks as if a storm is brewing. I think we should go inside, said Holmes. So we entered the drawing room, Holmes shutting and locking the patio door behind him. I could sense his mood had changed. He appeared a little agitated. He hesitated for a moment before staring at me with his penetrating eyes. Oh, hey, you're on the same team as my bestie, Easy Border. Same team? Bowling, is it? I like to bowl. I have a bowling ball. We talking about book reading people, I'm assuming? Because if so, that'd be cool. Oh, the Platinum Squad, of course. The Plat Squad, yes. It's good group of people. I completely missed what you meant by team. But, you know, I'm fine. Yeah, Gemma's a Plat Squad as well. There's a lot of people in the Plat Squad hanging out in here. Miss Adler, before we retire for the evening, there are a few things that I need to make you aware of. Certain peculiarities of my nature. I feel it only proper to discuss personal boundaries from the outset, so we are both aware of what is acceptable and unacceptable. 84, I thought it was 82. But only at playing a game. Heck yeah, I gotta get back to my Lego. Heck yeah, man. What are you building? Legos are fun. Acceptable to whom, Mr. Holmes? I frowned. I have bohemian habits, Holmes continued. You will no doubt become used to my little idiosyncrasies. I am an insomniac. I do, on occasion, allow myself the luxury of a lie-in, but never when I am working on a case. It started at 82, then went up to 84. Hey, look at you making waves. I sometimes play the violin during the night when I cannot sleep, which will often be due to my insomnia. If for any reason you decide to leave the sanctuary of your bedroom during the evening hours, then I would appreciate a little decorum. And I really must insist that you wear slippers upon these wooden floors. He sighed before declaring with comical irony. Apart from that, you will find me as easygoing as the next man. Ludo Espirito has installed a lock on the inside of your bedroom door for your protection. Let me assure you, Miss Adler, there will be no need to fear any impropriety on my part. He chuckled. If we were the last two people remaining on this spinning ball of rock, and procreation depending on us, then as far as I am concerned, humankind would cease to exist. I do hope that removes any doubts, fears, or concerns from your mind. Wow. Talk about being rude. If we're the last two people on Earth, you're dead to me. It's basically what he just said. Woo. And somehow these two ended up married. I looked at him askance. Holmes nodded back at me, shamefaced, as though realizing the implications of his narrative. He is a charmer, absolutely. Just one with the ladies. That was crass and extraordinarily crude of me. I'm so sorry. That was a misplaced, feeble attempt at irony. I glared at him indignantly. I must say that in your case, it's sometimes difficult to tell. But you are right. That was a thoughtless, insensitive remark. Tact and diplomacy are obviously skills you never mastered. May I remind you that I am only here with you now because I need you to protect me and not because I find you irresistible? As for playing your violin, have you considered sleeping pills to help with your insomnia? I think I have some in my bedroom. Would you like me to fetch them for you? No, thank you, Miss Adler. Holmes held up his hand. Tablets tend to numb the grey matter, and it is clear that I need all my faculties. It is most likely I will be up and about by the time you wake in the morning. I intend to drive down to the village to check in with the telegraph office. If you wish to write to your father, I will be happy to post the letter. If you can leave it on the kitchen table, I will collect it on my way out. Then, while I am gone, you may find yourself at liberty to come and go as you please, whilst under the constraints of this barn, of course. Thank you, Mr. Holmes. That's very kind of you. Let's face facts. It's not as though I've got a great deal of options right now. I will be sure to write to my father this evening. That will no doubt distract me from the disturbance of your violin. How fortuitous that I am a heavy sleeper. You have great wit, Miss Adler. I'll give you that, said Holmes. Although I must say I'm surprised you have time for frivolity. Leisure is, after all, the devil's playground. Well, I am American, Mr. Holmes, and it would appear that I have nothing but time on my hands. It is just as well that I have no fear of solitude. I am American. That's funny. He bowed to me coldly. I bid you good night then, Miss Adler, unless there's anything else you would like me to add, clarify, or explain. No, Mr. Holmes, there will be nothing else. Good night. I smiled at him sweetly. I then retired to my bedroom, sitting on the bed and reflecting on the events of the day. This is ridiculous. What on earth am I doing miles from my home, miles from reality, living under the same roof as Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde? That's hilarious. I proceeded to write a long letter to my father. On my way back down from the kitchen where I had left the envelope on the table, I heard the distinct sound of a violin. The notes were ragged and full of discords. The long, drawn, wailing notes wafting under my bedroom door. I sighed. Day one with Mr. Holmes, and already disillusionment had kicked in. I found myself alone in my room, reflecting on the irreparable ridiculousness of my situation, a situation so far removed from my gilded world. Mr. Holmes was indeed a complex figure, brilliant yet mentally terrifying. Eccentricities bordering on disrespectful, incredibly formal, unbelievably uptight. I was still trying to decide if he was the rudest man I had ever met or just an arrogant boor. And yet there had been moments of extraordinary kindness. I brushed my long hair in the mirror. My eyes rolled as Holmes continued to play. I couldn't help wondering if his insomnia had been compounded by the fact that he lived and worked in London. I spoke to myself in the mirror. Still struggling to sleep, Mr. Holmes? Why, that's a pity. If the violin is not working, might I suggest listening to one of your sanctimonious lectures? Yes, that should do it for you. I chuckled as I climbed into bed, face mask pulled over my eyes. Then, utterly exhausted, I drifted off into a deep sleep. And that, ladies and gentlemen, brings us to the end of chapter 13. That was an excellent chapter. After Hours Prohibition. Brilliant is the word. Well written. Well written indeed. All right, as promised, it's time for me to pay up on my squats, curls, hammer curls, and push-ups. Let's see which camera angle suits us best. It's probably going to be the room cam. Right there. Just plop that over the top of the jigsaw. Still got my headphones on so I can hear. But yes, let's do those, and then we're gonna raid out. It's been such an amazing night. I can't thank you enough. Feeling good. All right. Thank you. Love the book break for a workout? Yeah, well, when people start dropping subs, I gotta do it. Whew. All right, let's drop these down. There we go. What a creative way to sharpen both the mind and the body. Agreed. Anyone else notice the cute potted plant mug with legs and a face? Yeah, there's a few of those. You can only see the one though in the image, but there's like one right above my head here, and then there's another one over there, and then the one that you can see on this screen. I picked those out myself. Good stuff. Oh gosh, I don't know what to say about tonight. I am a little lost for words, to be honest. You guys have outdone yourselves. Gemma, you have been, my gosh, so generous, way too generous with your gifts. I don't know what to say other than thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you, Rexter.
You're like, I'm in a damn snowman.
Do you want to build a snowman?
Yeah, I want to build a snowman. The raid from Lit Girl Games. Thank you. Lit, you are amazing. Love hanging out with you in your stream. And we've had a lot of cool people in here tonight. New follows as well. It's just been amazing. I don't know how to say thank you well enough. I really don't. It's been amazing. I will be reading in Discord. Not my Discord, because I don't actually have one. But I will be reading in this Discord in about 12-ish minutes. We're reading Iron Flame. A fantastic book. It's the second book right after Fourth Wing. If anyone's familiar with it, you're welcome to join us. We'll be in the event chat. We all just show up in there. Everyone mutes up. I record it. I read it. And then I post them to YouTube privately so that if anyone misses a chapter, they can catch up. Because I don't want to get in trouble by, recording something that has copyright. Blah, blah, blah. But anyway, I digress. What is today? Thursday? We'll be back on Sunday. We will be back on Sunday, continuing this fantastic story. I want to see what kind of mischief Sherlock Holmes and Irene Adler get up to as they suddenly start despising their time with one another. Not shocked. Not shocked at all. Let's see. I'm just checking who's online right now that we can go say hello to. I have a friend. It's not anything like what we're doing right now. She's playing Hunt Showdown. But she's a lovely person. I enjoy her company. If you want to copy this raid message, helps if I type it out properly first. Please copy the raid message if you would like. Take you all over there. Make sure I type this correctly too, because Lord knows I can't type today. All right, the raid is up. Thank you for being here, for blessing me, for enjoying the story with me tonight. I can't thank you enough. I am so blessed. I am so grateful. I can't wait to read to you next time. But until then, as I always say, take care of yourselves, take care of each other, and have a wonderful night. Good night.